All right, man. Peace. So, throughout the annals of NBA history, transcendent players have always had one team that they faced in the playoffs, normally in the first or second round, that were good teams, but they could not get over the mental hurdle of defeating that transcendent player. Back when I was a kid, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers and Michael Jordan. They just could not beat Michael Jordan. They could not get over that hump. And also the New York Knicks, for that matter. In the 80s, the Denver Nuggets, they just could not get past Magic Johnson, no matter how hard they tried. You can make the case even in the late 2000s, you had teams like the Utah Jazz, they couldn't get past Kobe. And of course, in the 2010s, you had the Indiana Pacers and LeBron. And now in the latter part of the 2010s, you have the Toronto Raptors and LeBron James. And I'm already on record as stating in regards to the Raptors, I have no respect for their team. I don't like their makeup. I don't think that their coach is a championship level coach. And the two players that are supposed to be at the vanguard of their quote unquote movement, that being Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, they're both mentally fragile. And by no means am I trying to marginalize or demean DeMar DeRozan for his admission that he's dealing with depression issues. That is a real issue, something to be taken very seriously. But at the same time, when somebody acknowledges that they have those type of mental problems, I cannot take them seriously as an alpha athlete, as an alpha male who's going to lead his team to a championship. And he's already on record as stating a couple of years ago in regards to LeBron James after Toronto got swept, oh, well, we would have won if we had LeBron James. So what are you really saying? You're really saying that you don't have the mental makeup to defeat LeBron. And that showed last night. This is the year that many of the prognosticators are claiming that Toronto's going to defeat Cleveland. I'm already on record as stating I'm not going to pick against LeBron. I have to see it happen. I would not be surprised to see LeBron lose in any round of the playoffs, but I'm going to pick Cleveland in every round of the Eastern Conference playoffs until the finals. Whether they play Philadelphia in the next round or Boston in the next round, I'm going to be picking Cleveland because they have the best player in the NBA. And many of these teams have mental issues when they face LeBron James, and Toronto is the worst of the worst, as we saw last night in Game 1. Well, now this segment here takes place before Game 1 last night, and they're going to make their predictions in regards to this series. As for me, I'm going to pick the Cleveland Cavaliers in 4 or 5 games. Anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, LeBron James legit put his team on his back, leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists this series. When I say LeBron didn't have much help, this is the first time none of his teammates scored 20 in any game of the series in over a decade. I know you mentioned that stat earlier, Max. But does he have enough left to beat those Raptors?
Yes, he's going to have more than enough left. More than enough left. And you're going to see a renaissance of his teammates in these playoffs, particularly in this round. Unless Toronto just surprises me and gains a level of courage. You know, the rapport between the Toronto Raptors and LeBron James reminds me of the rapport between George McFly and Biff in Back to the Future. A lot of it's just mental. They have a fear of the bully. Now, LeBron James does a lot to bolster that intimidation factor because he's extremely proficient on the basketball floor. But Toronto has the better team. And it's just a matter of, can their coach be a little bit more imaginative with their offense down the stretch of games? As you can see last night in Game 1, he had no confidence in DeRozan or Lowry because he designed game-ending shots for Van Fleet both times. And I think I mentioned this in another video. When one of the reporters, I believe Stephen A. Smith, asked Kyle Lowry why they were struggling against the Washington Wizards, he pointed to Van Fleet, a bench player, and said, because we don't have that guy. That told me all I needed to know about their psychology as a team. They're mentally weak.
No, he didn't have enough to start with to beat the Raptors. I'd take the Raptors, period, in a first-round series, but especially in the next round, where the Cavs, and it was critical for them to not have an extended series with Indiana. They went the distance with Indiana, and then some. I mean, by the way, Indiana, a little more focused at the end of Game 7. Maybe they win. Hey.
Or a little better coached at the end of Game 7. Maybe they win, or throughout the series. Sorry, but Nate McMillan is not a championship-level coach. He's a nice coach, but he's not someone who's going to get you to a title. Whenever you're holding out Victor Oladipo as long as he did at the end of the third into the fourth quarter, that's telling me that you're not serious about winning. He was not even aware that the only reason why LeBron was out of the game was because of cramping. I think he was trying to link up Victor Oladipo's playing time with LeBron. I don't think he realized until it was over that LeBron wasn't out because he was resting. He was out because he was cramping. It's Game 7, Nate McMillan. There is no Game 8. Like Apollo Creed told Rocky in Rocky 3, there is no tomorrow, dude.
It came down to the wire. Even as the Cavs had what seemed to be a comfortable, 3-possession lead, you still thought, somehow maybe this isn't over. No, the Cavs do not have enough, and Toronto is especially deep. So you mean to tell me the Cavs, with LeBron going ham, right? Yeah. LeBron playing lights out of this world. Oh my God, now maybe he is as good as Michael Jordan, is the question being asked.
Being asked by who? You mean in the recesses of your mind, because you're a LeBron James super fan. It took 7 games for LeBron to get past the Indiana Pacers, a nice, young, up-and-coming team. Back in Jordan's day, that team would have got swept. It would have been swept. Once again, in the late 80s, when Jordan was first starting to win playoff series, all those teams that he beat in the late 80s, they were given the advantage over his team, and he was able to defeat them in the playoffs. They're trying to give LeBron James credit for beating a team that he was favored to beat. His team was favored to beat the Indiana Pacers. And they're trying to act as if he had some heroic performance where, despite the odds, they were able to win. Give me a break.
They barely get by an Indiana team, and it's the Cavs who have home court. Now they got to go to a better Raptors team. Everyone knows the Raptors are better than Indy. A deeper team, a fresher team. And that team has home court. How's LeBron going to do that? It's not a 9-game. He needed 7 to take care of Indy. He's going to need, 9, 11 to get there? Ain't 9 or 11. There's only 7 at most. And I don't even know if he goes 7 with the Raptors.
Well, first of all, the Raptors are clearly the better team. I'm not about to sit here and tell you that Cleveland's better than Toronto. That would be nonsense. I know better than that.
It's not a matter of whether or not the Cleveland Cavalier roster is better than Toronto. It's a matter of whether or not LeBron James, being the best player in the NBA, can once again inflict the psychological damage as well as the on-court damage against Toronto to break them down mentally so that they'll fold up, which is what always seems to occur.
I'm just not going to jump off the bandwagon. I'm going to go down with the ship because...
You should try it. It's fun.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go down with the ship. I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon.
Right off the Pelicans.
You're the pro. You know what you're doing in that department. Here's the reality of the situation. It's going to take a superhuman effort from LeBron James in order to win this series. Because
I don't think so. I don't think that it's going to take all that. I think it's just going to take a normal LeBron James effort, which is most likely for the series somewhere around 31, 8-8 to defeat the Raptors in 5 games. I see them folding up, especially if Cleveland were to win Game 2. It wouldn't shock me if they get swept. I don't think that the Raptors have the fortitude to bring it back to Toronto if they go down 0-2 in Toronto.
Because they're not the better team. They have the best player in the world and virtually nothing else. Having said all of that, because of what this man has been able to do from Toronto,
I don't understand how they could say that the Cleveland Cavaliers have the best player in the world and virtually nothing else when he has a 5-time All-Star on his team. Tristan Thompson was a high first-round draft pick. J.R. Smith was a blue chip prospect coming out of high school into the NBA and was one of the top talents in the league, even though, of course, he's not been able to truly convert his talent into all-star level production. When he concentrates, he can be one of the top defenders at his position in the league, and he's a great streak shooter. As well as the fact that with the bevy of trades that LeBron James executed around the time of the All-Star break / the trading deadline, they brought in young talent that, for the most part, most of these liberal sports media pundits, they stated that it made the Cleveland Cavaliers a better team. So it's interesting that once again they're trying to help LeBron with the victim underdog role that he likes to take so that they can make excuses for why he never wins the big one, or very rarely does, unless there's a great amount of serendipity on his side.
From Toronto on so many occasions. When I look at the Toronto Raptors with Masai and obviously Dwayne Casey, they clearly went about the business of building this team specifically to beat LeBron James.
Yeah.
That was their number one nemesis. They clearly weren't worried about the Wizards. They didn't have to be. Outscored them 29-14 in the fourth quarter. I was at that game Friday night. The Wizards just don't even get me started with them. I'm just so disgusted with them. Somebody needs to go there. And
we actually are getting into them later.
You can't even keep them together.
Not at all. They have to be exploded because they've been imploding for the last 2 seasons. They have to be exploded. They have to go. And John Wall actually touched on the sentiment that I've been putting forth in regards to that team, that there are a lot of malcontents in that locker room because they're not happy, they're not content with their roles. And that happens when many of the role players in your locker room see the alpha dog on the team and they don't think that he's great. They just think that he's very good. And they feel like if they worked a little harder, they could do what he does. That's a huge problem. You have to get those guys out of there. I remember that on that Bulls team in the early 90s, the first three-peat team, there were oftentimes issues with many of the role players, not necessarily in regards to any enmity or antipathy aimed towards Jordan, because his leadership was unquestioned. He was the best player in the NBA. But they had a bevy of young players who thought that they should have been getting more playing time than they were getting. B.J. Armstrong thought that he should have been starting over John Paxson. Scott Williams and Stacey King wanted to compete for more playing time over Horace Grant. Will Perdue was frustrated that he was a higher level draft pick. I believe he was drafted in 88 or 89, one of those seasons. And they still maintained Bill Cartwright over him. So these are issues that you have in locker rooms, even with players that are transcendent. So you can imagine a John Wall who seems to constantly have issues with Bradley Beal. And then you have other young and up-and-coming players, or at least in their own minds, like Kelly Oubre and Otto Porter, as well as the problems that John Wall seems to have with the center on that team, Gortat. So to me, Wall should request a trade. If I was John Wall's agent, I would tell him that he should request a trade, or would you like me to contact the team and request a trade? Because I think that it's time for John Wall to seek out greener pastures.
But when you look at it's this kid, Pirtle for Toronto, Siakam, you've got length,
bench guys.
Size. You got bench guys, and they're going to throw bodies after bodies after bodies at LeBron James. My question is, can he overcome it? For the moment, I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say, because LeBron...
You have to ask his biochemist trainer if he can overcome it. Can that trainer cook up a little cocktail for him, allegedly?
LeBron James is playing with house money. He has nothing to lose because everyone knows the Toronto Raptors are better.
And that's just how he likes it. That's the reason why he likes to control the narrative, so that he can puppet you guys in the media, and you can help him perpetuate the image that for some reason he should be viewed as the underdog in all these series. And I stated this a very long time ago. That's why the trades that they made at the trading deadline to bring in all these young and inexperienced players, it was as much for LeBron and his image as it was for any realistic opportunity that he may allege to want to win a championship.
And all the pressure is on Toronto because of it. We shall see. They are the better team without question. But I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon until I'm absolutely...
You didn't even make your best argument.
That's right.
You didn't even make your best argument.
Don't have to.
Stephen A., the best argument is that LeBron didn't get anything from anyone in the first round and was able to beat Indiana. Maybe, like law of averages says, a couple of guys are going to have some good games against Toronto. But what I'm saying is, even if that happens, that's not going to be enough. I don't view this as very close right now. As I said, Toronto, top 5 offense, top 5 defense, most of the season.
Let me say this very quickly. In the history of the NBA, it's very rare that you have a team like the Toronto Raptors who clearly are under psychological subjection to a transcendent player that can go from getting swept the year before to showing any trace of being viable in the next season. When you watch how the Chicago Bulls in the late 80s incrementally got better and better and better every year, they were the most competitive team with the Detroit Pistons in the playoffs, all the way from 88 to 1990. Now, in 88, they only won one game, but those games were very competitive. Now, the Boston Celtics were able to defeat the Detroit Pistons twice in the Eastern Conference Finals. They lost that series, and then, of course, the Lakers won 7 games. But really, the Detroit Pistons should have beat the Lakers in the finals that year. Had it not been for Isaiah Thomas's injury, they should have beat them in 6 games. In 89, the Bulls were able to defeat the Pistons twice in those playoffs. I don't even think that the Pistons lost any other games in that NBA playoffs 1989 run to their first championship. And in 1990, the Bulls won 3 games in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Detroit Pistons. It wasn't like they got swept in 1990 and then in 1991 they swept the Pistons. So I don't see that drastic a turnaround for the Toronto Raptors, even if we were trying to bolster any type of argument for them beating LeBron in this year's playoffs. I just don't see it. And once again, their leadership is just way too mentally fragile. They don't have a real alpha on their team. Kyle Lowry, to me, is not a starting point guard on an NBA championship team. He's just not. I don't even know if Kyle Lowry is that much better than Terry Rozier from the Boston Celtics. And in regards to DeRozan, he has all the physical talent in the world, but mentally he just doesn't have it.
They are well coached. Their Achilles heel, as I mentioned, is late in games. They ISO DeRozan and Lowry.
That means that they're not that well coached. Because I don't care how good your overall blueprint and your schematics are early in the game. What separates great coaches from average and just pretty good coaches is their ability to diagram plays when it counts and to make sure that the team does not deviate from the offensive game plan down the stretch, especially if you know that you don't have clutch players. DeRozan and Lowry are not clutch.
They are going to have to address that, but I've been saying since about the All-Star break, I'm not sure against this Cleveland, or after the All-Star break, sorry, because the Cleveland looked good after the trade, and then a couple games later, not so good again. I just don't, Cleveland just doesn't have it. They don't have enough, and I don't think it's going...
They have enough to beat Toronto.
Going to come down to the last couple minutes of the game against Toronto. You saw that was the case against Indiana. Several of the games, it wasn't a game late in the fourth quarter. If Toronto's better than Indiana. If there are 2 or 3 games where they don't have to worry about DeRozan or Lowry or ISOing and playing hero ball, they're just going to win those games anyway.
Right.
I don't see how Cleveland does it.
Listen, I understand that. And listen, again, the task is daunting. They're not the favorites in the series. But I will give you a scenario under which they can make things interesting. The only other person that Dwayne Casey puts on the floor that generates any kind of offense for you is Fred VanVleet. Outside of him, everybody's on the court for defensive and energy purposes. So if you are LeBron James, the one thing that you have to deal with LeBron James, you can never be on a court without offense. You have to be able to score. Because just defending is not enough against him because he's going to find a way. Remember, yesterday, I didn't care how close the game was. I knew there was no way in hell the Indiana Pacers had a chance. Do you know why, ladies and gentlemen? Because it was 5-on-8. It was the Indiana Pacers against the 5 guys on Cleveland and 3 officials.
Ding, ding. Hey, Stephen A. Smith, you better watch yourself, bruh. You're a little bit too high profile to be saying that on national television. That's what people like me to say. That's what people like me to say. Let me rewind that back one more time.
I mean, this LeBron. I didn't care how close the game was. I knew there was no way in hell the Indiana Pacers had a chance. Do you know why, ladies and gentlemen? Because it was 5-on-8. It was the Indiana Pacers against the 5 guys on Cleveland and 3 officials. I mean, this is LeBron James. Ain't going out no first round. You understand? Television.
Thank you, sir.
Television matters. Ratings matter. That brother wasn't going home in the first round. I can assure you of that.
Look at Max Kellerman's face. Max Kellerman's like Stephen A. Smith. This is not something that just won't be saying on air. That's something that we talk about in the dressing room. What are you talking about right now, Stephen A. Smith? Look at Max Kellerman's face.
What word did know about LeBron James losing the game 7? Did I not come on here and tell you? I said, I ain't worried about that. First of all, I didn't think it would go 7. But I said if it went 7,
it was not supposed to go 7. That shows you that LeBron James' style of play was not conducive to maximizing the performance of his teammates, Stephen A. Smith. That's why you just can't look at numbers. There's no way that they were supposed to go 7 games with a neophyte Indiana Pacers team. I don't care how competitive they were in the regular season. That series was not supposed to go 7 games.
What if there's something to do with Oladipo missing wide open 3?
Let me tell you something.
Or Sabonis turning the ball over.
Saying, as the game unfolds, when LeBron went out, they were up 2. And he came back, they were up 9. Again, it's going to be interesting or whatever, but if it got to, like, for example, in Game 5, that was a goaltender. Did LeBron get called against the goaltender? No, he did not. Sorry. No.
Thank you, Stephen A. Smith. You're making my point perfectly. And this is exactly what I'm referring to when I state that when you start to speak about things like professional sports being rigged, things of that nature, you have to qualify your statements. You have to put things in proper context. Well, many of these guys on the internet, the hoax committee and everything is rigged committee, most of those guys, first off, are people who want to feel deeper than they really are. That's why they make those type of statements. And I'm sure that many of them will get upset in the comments. It is what it is. I really don't give a shit. But I remember when I first started making many of these videos last season during the NBA Finals, a lot of those geniuses came in the comments, oh, well, you know, Cleveland is down 0-3. The NBA wants LeBron to win. He's going to be the first guy to come back from down 0-3. When the Cavaliers won Game 4, they were all over the comments, and I saw them all over YouTube. And as soon as Cleveland lost in the 5th game, they disappeared. That's why I don't take those guys seriously, because once again, brothers, and I say this all the time, intelligence isn't the understanding of nuance. What idiots do is they go to the extreme, either to the right hand or to the left. So is the NBA, as all professional sports, are they controlled? Absolutely. There are narratives that the brain trust in these various sports want to play out. There are certain athletes that they want to exalt. There are certain coaches that they want to exalt. Why is that? Because those coaches are MK handlers or even MK programmers. You have certain athletes that are monarch children that have been put under sports programming where they have genetic modification. These entities they want to exalt. So yes, down the stretch of close games, the referees are going to help them out. But if certain teams execute well enough, they can overcome that storyline. That's the point. What a lot of these buffoons out here, the so-called hoax committee, would have you believe is that you're just watching a dance recital, and that all 15 players on both teams are told exactly what moves to make every second of every game on the court or on the field. It's just asinine. And it's truly an example, once again, of the over inundation of information and how it's burning people's brains out because they're not used to being able to assimilate information and being able to take it and redisperse it with something sensible. All they do is take all this data that they're receiving from all these different videos and television shows that they're watching, and they just become overly paranoid. But Stephen A. Smith put it perfect. This is really what it's about. LeBron James is going to make the most money for the league, and they don't want him to go out in the first round. They only want LeBron to go out in 2 rounds, either in the 3rd round to the Philadelphia 76ers or in the final round to either the Golden State Warriors or the Houston Rockets, and that will put a nice little bow on his return to Cleveland and set up his movement somewhere else. That's the storyline. That's it. It's not about all 15 guys on both teams, the coaches and the referees, knowing exactly what each player is going to do every moment on the court and saying the final score is going to be 109 to 106 and the 15th player on the end of the bench is going to score the last basket of the game with 2 seconds left, and it's already been preordained, all this other dumb shit. Stephen A. Smith laid it out perfect. That's all it's about.
There's no way in hell that LeBron James is going to lose a game 7 in the first round. What's going to happen? I'm trying to, because it would have been Indiana, Toronto to play. Oh my Lord. Oh my goodness. Talk about, I mean, do you know how many options are television? I mean, come on now. I mean, the ratings matter, please. And I'm not saying it's purposeful. It's just, it's almost like a default position. LeBron James out of the first round can't happen. Wasn't even worried about.
Well, it's purposeful because the NBA is a business and they want to make sure that they have their best product available in their most prestigious tournament as late as possible. But as Stephen A. Smith is stating, it's nothing particularly nefarious as many of the people on the internet would try to make it out to be in regards to how everything is just controlled and everything is a hoax. Well, it's purposeful from the standpoint that, according to the optimal business model, you want your best talent available in your most prestigious tournament as late as possible. But once again, it's not as complete as many people would like to make you think it is.
Toronto makes it a little bit more interesting, but in the end, what it comes down to is you have got to have offense on the court, because if you don't, LeBron's gonna find a way to score, even if they gotta send him to the free throw line. He gonna get some points.
LeBron average?
He'll get some points.
Come on.
You book that.
LeBron's averaging an ungodly number of minutes, 41 minutes a game. But that still leaves 7 minutes where that second unit for Toronto's got you. That sounds funny, but 7 minutes, they may make up 8-10 points.
The playoffs.
They're gonna blow out Cleveland a couple of times in this series.
How many?
We'll see. I'm not so sure about that.
How many games is the series up?
Well, for me personally, I think that LeBron and them can win in 7.
I think Toronto closes them out in 6.
Yeah.
I have the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games.
How about it? I'll remember those predictions. All right, they will forever.
But anyway, that's it on the prediction video for the second round of the playoffs and the matchup between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Toronto Raptors. And please keep in mind what Stephen A. Smith stated. It's something that I've been stating for the longest time. Yes, this is an entertainment league. That's what the NBA is. The NBA is an entertainment league. But is it on the same level of the WWE in regards to entertainment? where everything is scripted down to the movements? No. But do you have certain plants amongst the players and the coaches? May you have some issues with mafia ties? Oh, absolutely. But, oftentimes, once again, everybody is at such a fever pitch because of, once again, the how people are so inundated with information now. You have people who are trying to force their brains to function at a level that their brain is just not built to function at. So they respond back by becoming extremists on everything. And the things that they should be extreme about, they're not. But the things that they shouldn't be extreme about, they are. And they're trying to make sense of this world. I mean, to a degree, I understand it. But once again, brothers, wisdom and intelligence is all in the ability to differentiate. Can you make out the different shades of gray? It's not about everything is rigged. Every aspect of everything in every game is rigged. No, it doesn't work like that. You have plants there. You have monarch athletes. You have MK handler coaches. You have MK programmers amongst the owners or amongst the executives who are told that this person here coming up through the ranks in high school and college is an asset, and it's up to you if you can acquire that asset. But anyway, peace.